Welcome to Business Decoded with Ronnie Spellman. We crack the code so you don't have to.
Welcome to the Business Decoded podcast with Ronnie Spellman. I'm here with a delightful guest. For many months, I've been wanting to have someone from the oil and gas industry and happened to come across James. We had a chance to meet at an event. James Holmes, welcome to the Business Decoded podcast.
Thank you for having me on, Ronnie.
So you are a super attorney that happens to focus on oil and gas, but you're also a business leader in the oil and gas industry. So I'm excited to have you on to talk about oil and gas and law and what you've done from a business perspective.
I'm happy to be here.
So tell us about the firm.
We have a law firm, Holmes P. LLC, probably in the geographic center of downtown Dallas, and it provides a variety of legal services, transactional work, as well as litigation work occasionally. Most of it has an oil and gas focus, but occasionally our clients require us to do just a general business case.
Okay. Now, so what is the oil and gas industry like? I know that I've often wondered, especially now that I've been in Texas, Texas is such a huge oil and gas state that there are a lot of small businesses that have grown up, a lot of oil drilling and the like within the state. What does the state look like from an oil and gas perspective?
It's thriving, and we're thriving now for the better part of the last 20 years. Certainly since about 2005 to present, the industry's done very well. Elevated oil and gas prices, particularly oil prices, have opened up new oil fields, opened up and made economical, very expensive lateral wells that go into shale rock to unleash hydrocarbons. All of that has been made possible by the historically elevated prices we've had for the past 20 years.
So not only are you in oil and gas, but you grew up in West Texas. Everyone from West Texas, I think, has oil in their blood and veins.
Raised in Amarillo, Texas, and to get into the oil and gas business, I'm from the right tribe.
Right. But when you started out your career, you didn't start in oil and gas. So you worked in another segment before you ultimately ended up in oil and gas.
I did. So as a law student at the University of Texas down in Austin, and then working in Austin a year later for the Texas Supreme Court, I just observed a lot about judges and courtroom behavior and procedures. Right. I got to Dallas in 96, and from 96 to 2000, I had what we call a garden variety commercial practice.
Sure. Contracts,
real estate, occasionally some personal injury. Actually volunteered and was an assistant district attorney under Bill Hill, our district attorney in the 90s, for 6 or 8 months to pick up the trial experience.
Okay.
So I have tried a lot of different civil and criminal matters, both from a trial and appellate standpoint, as well as transactional work.
Sure. Now, how'd you find your way back to oil and gas? Was there some kind of pivotal moment or an introduction that made that transition happen for you?
I was a young lawyer with a very exciting firm that also had a lot of roots in West Texas.
Okay.
One of their long-term clients was an oil heiress. She was the last living member of the family that founded the Mallet Ranch just west of Lubbock. Yeah. And she became a client, and she was a client of mine until she passed in 2016. She would every year just have a variety of transactional and litigation needs, which required me to pick up a lot of different skills. I was her what we call rat killer lawyer. So I can get everything done for you, including killing that rat in the corner if you need me to. Through her relationship, I met and became clients and friends with her family's historical neighbors out in West Texas, had some very large ranch lands that at one point had belonged to Colonel Christopher Columbus Slaughter, C.C. Slaughter.
Yes.
He was the wealthiest Texan at the turn of last century.
Wow.
And through the relationship I had with the first oil client became a relationship with her neighbors. And from there, further connections, the spider web just kept growing.
That's pretty neat how you can build a relationship like that and then it can evolve into something more.
Yes.
I remember the story of a friend who ended up working with Ross Perot Sr., who's an attorney. Tom Luce in the area. And it kind of started the same. Ross Perot Sr. wanted someone from Texas to represent him, from Dallas particularly. And they just built a great relationship that evolved into this long-term partnership. But it sounds like that was something similar many respects.
It is. And as an encouragement to young people who are wanting to get into whatever industry it is, it could be oil and gas or tech or whatever industry you want to get into, just be ready to pay your dues over many years. I have there's a good expression I learned from a mentor years ago. Friends come and go, enemies accumulate. So try to avoid bad breaks. Try to really nourish and cherish your long-term relationships. I would say that at the Holmes law firm, 80% to possibly 90% of the work we do comes from clients that I met when I was 30 or 32. Oh, wow. So we're talking 26 years ago.
Right.
These, and particularly in oil and gas, people have very long-term generational needs.
Right.
So, you're good to your initial set of clients. Well, then all of a sudden you're representing their kids or grandkids before you know it.
Now, was it through that relationship that you started having tours out in that Lubbock area of the different ranches?
Yeah. So part of the fascination I've always found interesting about the oil and gas business is learning the history of the land.
Right.
The land usually is farm or ranch land in a rural part of the state, usually. And usually those ranching families oftentimes have been on that land since 1880s, certainly 19 teens. And you're dealing with great-grandchildren of pioneers of Texas history. And part of my fascination with history in general led me and some colleagues who were professors out in West Texas to organize ranch tours, which from 2005 to 2010, we'd get a bunch of folks in buses with each bus had a microphone and a presenter, and I would have a bus. My colleagues would have the other two. And we would go from 8 in the morning till 11 at night.
Oh, wow.
And we fed these people along the way.
That's a long day.
And we would tour 5 or 6 legacy West Texas ranches. And as you can imagine, the ranches are each, an hour plus apart.
Wow.
So it takes a full day to get to all of them.
Right.
But it was fascinating learning about the ranching and farming culture, which existed long before the oil and gas culture, and which has had to learn to coexist with it since.
Right. Now, one of the items I think I read in one of your writings regarding ranches and land and farming is that a lot of farmers, their value is just in the land. It's not like they make a lot of revenue or profit from the land. They're growing agriculture, and it's seasonal and it's up and down. But it sounds like oil, from what you've seen in your experience, has added additional value to many of those ranchers and those farmers.
Correct. So many of these legacy stretches of West Texas were coping with dry land farming. Oftentimes, it wasn't even suitable for cattle. It was goat farming for many decades until the late 20s and 1930s came along, and they discovered your ranch and farmland is on top of some of North America's largest hydrocarbon fields. And so it always helps to pay for a struggling farmer ranch if you've got a cow that eats in one spot over and over. I'm talking about a pump jack.
Right.
It tends to fund the rest of your marginally profitable agricultural activities. Right. A lot of the families will say the ranch has remained in the family, and we didn't have to sell it or sell parts of it because of the hydrocarbon wealth.
Right. Right. Now, what do you mostly represent from a legal perspective in dealing with those types of organizations? Then I'd love to get in some of your other investments in the oil and gas industry. But from a legal perspective, leasing land, what does that structure look like?
Folks come to me when they need help managing their surface estate.
Okay.
So there's a lot of oil activity. Oil companies need to put pipelines across their land, caliche roads. Oil companies need to put saltwater disposal wells on or near their land.
Okay.
Oil companies need to move water or other products across their land, even though the water and hydrocarbon products didn't originate in their land.
Interesting.
We are dealing with easements, surface use agreements, a variety of water-related contracts. So a lot of our work and our legal fees relate to managing the surface estate. I have clients who are on the ranch lands of some of the most active Wolfcamp and Bone Spring drilling programs in Texas for the past 5+ years.
Right.
I get to sort of play referee with the oil companies to make sure they respect my client's surface rights.
Right.
But at the same time, my client and I want them to succeed. We don't want to get in their way. There's just got to be accommodations have got to be reached. Then the same clients usually who own the surface estate own all or most of the mineral estate.
Okay.
And so we need to manage their minerals. What minerals are unleased?
Sure.
And that can be put under a lease. What minerals are leased and need to be released, as in taken out of the lease because the lease no longer holds the acreage. What minerals are leased and generate royalty income, then we step into volume and pricing assessments and monitoring.
Okay.
I started the business becoming expert in gas processing, gathering and processing and pricing of casing head gas and other forms of gas and all the products derived from them.
Sure.
It's a very difficult and opaque part of the business.
Right.
And that enabled, once you learn that part of the business, the rest of it's kind of a breeze.
Right.
So I still to this day do a lot of crude oil, NGL, and residue gas and nat gas monitoring and pricing assessment.
Okay.
It's a large part of what I do.
Okay. How does that work then from the pricing assessment piece? Like that's definitely different from the lease and the surface land. And it sounds complicated.
Sure. So the product in the ground is part of the real estate.
Right.
The minerals and royalty interests are technically real estate. The moment the gas and oil or other products come to the surface, it becomes personal property. It has to be measured. It has to be transported. It has to be taxed. It has to, in the case of associated gas associated with crude oil, AKA casing head gas, it has to be processed fairly close to the points of production. It goes into a plant. Typically, the royalty owner, also landowner, also lessor under a lease, typically they don't have rights to look into that plant's accounting.
Okay.
They just have to sort of trust something good is happening in there. Oftentimes, they are getting shortchanged in and out of the plant.
Oh, interesting.
Not only royalty owners, but non-operating working interest owners who don't operate the property, but they co-own it with a different oil company.
Right.
Oftentimes, my clients are non-operating working interest owners who need me to do much the same thing I'm doing for the royalty owners.
Right.
All of that I'm describing now, what I was intensely involved with from 2000 to about 2010.
Okay.
All of that phase of my career was really challenging the state's largest oil producers over their gas management, gas marketing, and pricing.
Right.
Picked up a lot of skills and a lot of contacts, both with the oil companies I was opposing, as well as pipeline companies.
Sure.
Used those contacts and that knowledge to create more of a transactional law practice, and then business activities spun off of it as well.
You know, it's fascinating when I think about the oil industry. I think a lot of people think of the oil industry as just truly oil for, let's say, your car and gas for your car. But that industry also, most people don't truly understand that the oil actually goes to make plastic and elements of polyester that goes into clothing. It's a much bigger industry than just oil for the car, whether gas or oil that goes into the engine. But it's a massive market. A lot of the big oil companies, they also produce the pellets that are used in that plastic making industry.
It is. It's a fascinating industry that's really transformed medicines, fertilizers, plastics, as you say. You could hardly sit down or touch anything in this office that doesn't have some sort of hydrocarbon chemical product mixed into it. The petrochemical part of the business is very important. That's pretty downstream from me.
Sure.
I'm way upstream. We got to find it in the ground. We got to get it out of the ground. We got to transport it and burn it in a refinery or process it in the gas plant. I'm pretty upstream, but you're right. At the tailgate of refineries and gas plants, come a variety of hydrocarbon products that that become feedstock for the petrochemical industry.
And it's just, and I mention it because it's so important, not just in the U.S. or not just Texas, but around the world. When it comes to feeding the energy needs, the consumer needs, it's just a really big and important segment.
It's a very important part. Oil companies and gas companies, they take their fair share of criticism, and I'll share in some of that criticism. I, for instance, think the oil and gas companies in Texas need to do a better job of taking care of orphaned and abandoned wells.
Sure.
And those need to be cleaned up, plugged, and abandoned so they don't create environmental harms.
Right.
It is a growing problem in Texas that the folks who need to monitor it have been less attentive to it than they ought to.
Sure.
The oil and gas industry takes a lot of criticism, of course, from climate change concerns. Every seminar I've been to involving the highest level engineers and accountants with the largest producers, they all want to run their companies in a cleaner, more careful way.
Yes.
Tell them what the rules are, tell them how to operate in a clean, environmentally safe manner, and they will do it.
Right.
And that will then build in some costs that will be borne by consumers.
Sure.
And that's just a choice a broad community has got to make.
Right.
But they'll follow the law if you tell them what the law is.
Right. Now, here to that point as well, and that we got so many, much more items to discuss with you. But West Texas, and a lot of people that have not traveled through Texas might not know this, but West Texas has a lot of alternative fuel sources as well. They have these huge wind turbines. Mm-hmm. So if you drive out, if anyone ever drives from Dallas to El Paso, massive, massive investment in other fuel sources as well, such as wind.
There has been some interest in solar and some wind, some renewables. My career has been close to, but not in that space.
Sure.
My clients tend to be ones who don't want large parts of their surface estate devoted to solar and wind.
Right.
That comes with its own set of headaches.
Right.
But you're right. No, we need to have in America and everywhere else in the world. We need to have a diverse set of energy sources.
Right. But to your point, though, just West Texas is not just oil. There's so much diversity of energy sources out there, and it's really impressive. If anyone hadn't traveled,
every part of the state. And I even work oil and gas in the Brazos River Valley area or East Texas because of various gas shale plays in East Texas. I've never seen oil and gas land in Texas that didn't have a very vibrant form of agricultural economy coexisting with it.
Right. Now, how did you transfer from being one of the top attorneys in oil and gas in the entire state of Texas to being a business leader investing in oil and gas?
Sure. So I had spent, under 40 involved in years-long, very complicated trials and appeals involving mostly gas marketing and gas measurement, and was tired of fighting the 800-pound gorilla every day because every opponent was a large oil company with a basketball team full of lawyers against me and one legal assistant.
Right.
So did that, made a little money, found much more interesting than the lawsuit part of it and the lawsuit drama part of it. I just found the industry interesting, the subject matter I really liked. So I said, how can I do something different in my 40s? And took the knowledge and the contacts and began initially buying, selling, and storing crude oil, mostly on pipeline, occasionally truck. That then led to crude oil shipping arrangements.
Sure.
I worked with some pipelines and some refiners to help them move oil from one part of the state to another part of the state. We work together on those projects when the market allows us to. The pricing's got to be right. Raising a lot of private capital, whether it be private equity or private debt, to fund oil-filled activities. Now, that could be drilling deals.
Sure.
We're going to put some new holes in the ground and try to find some new hydrocarbons. Those tend to be on the risky end of the spectrum. To less risky endeavors, like building out water management and saltwater disposal systems or gas gathering systems.
Right.
So have always concurrently since 2010 had an oil and gas law practice that has coexisted nicely with oil and gas investing or business.
That's amazing.
And my relationships are carefully defined. People know that I'm in your life as your lawyer, or I'm in your life as your business counterparty. You got to be very clear in your communication.
So you work with a lot of companies as well to help them find the investment they need to grow their business and to take some of those investment risk.
Yes.
In the oil and gas industry.
Absolutely. And we've got, a lot of wonderful consultants, men who spent decades in industry, usually for a wildcatter or a large oil and gas company who are now retired, but they do a lot of consulting for us, and we bring them in and use a lot of their gray cells to assess the risk profile of any project.
Right.
And we've been taught, you kiss a lot of frogs to find a couple of princes. So we look at a lot of deals and turn a lot of them away.
Right.
It's just too speculative.
Right. Now, in speaking to a lot of friends that invest in technology, they'll tell you about the unicorn deal. And what they'll tell you is that 1 out of 10 deals, that one unicorn deal pays for all the other non-losses. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like the same. You can probably drill quite a few holes, and then you get one that actually produces quality results.
I would say drilling deals fit the profile you've described. It does tend to be a deal where you need to spread out your capital and your risks.
Sure.
Because like you say, you'll have of the 10, 5 losers and 4 that barely break even, but one humdinger that pays for all the losses and then some.
Right.
I've never really liked that risk profile, either as a lawyer or a businessman. Plaintiffs' lawyers oftentimes will take contingency fee cases, and they pretty much have the same stats I just gave you for drilling wells. My personal choices are to just move into less risky propositions. I want more sure things.
Sure.
And the clients and colleagues I work with have the same temperament as me.
Right. There's a friend of mine I had lunch with several months ago, and I didn't realize he's a major developer in the area. His father's a major developer. What I didn't realize, he started out as a lane man. You mentioned the Lane Man, which reminded me to ask him the same question is, have you seen the show Lane Man by Taylor Sheridan? And I asked him if it was similar. He's been watching it. He said there's a lot of difference, but it's a great, great show. So I don't know if you've been watching the Wildcatter and the Lane Man and those types of programs that discuss the industry.
I'm asked if I watch the Landman, Billy Bob Thornton thing about once a week. I'm going to break down and start doing it because I get asked by it so often. I like to see how accurate it is. I'm not aware of folks in my business who are kidnapped and held up at gunpoint, but I do need to see it just simply so that I'll be in the know.
Right. Well, in Texas, so what's fascinating about the oil and gas, particularly in Texas, is that it created a lot of great business leaders that went on to do other things, from owning sports. Even Jerry Jones, he's not originally from Texas, but one of his first deals or major deals helped to buy the Dallas Cowboys. But there are a lot of people that started in that oil and gas industry, and now they're in real estate and professional sports and just a bunch of other areas. Yep. But Texas is growing. It's now the 8th largest economy in the world. So larger than most countries, largest in land size, only behind Alaska, largest in population, only behind California, number 1 business state for, I think, the past 12, 13 years. So there's a lot of business activity here in Texas.
Yes.
What are you seeing from your side?
Okay, so we are doing, what you're describing, really, I would date from the early to mid 90s to present. Oftentimes, this is called the Texas Miracle.
Yes, it has been a miracle. Yes.
A broad term that explains legislative initiatives and judicial appointments and selections, whether that be through appointment or elections. We've got some really high caliber judges at the trial and appellate level. It also involves our agencies being pro-business. Right. A combination of legislation, courts, and agencies tend to promote Texas business atmosphere and attract companies to begin headquartering here, or reincorporating here, or just increasing their presence here, having a larger number of employees here. Those are all good things for our economy.
It is.
In small and large, I'm talking publicly traded companies like an ExxonMobil, which it recently announced it's going to reincorporate in the state.
That's fantastic.
As well as companies that are smaller and not publicly traded. All that's wonderful. The single factor that I believe will help the Texas Miracle to continue, and that will continue to have all the good dividends that come from that, is the business court.
Okay.
And so I'd like to chat a little bit about that, if that's okay.
No, in the business court, as you mentioned, has been one of the biggest changes probably in the country. There are other states that have similar setups, but this one, my understanding, they worked really hard to try to perfect the model.
Yes.
And it's still evolving.
It is.
But no, absolutely. I'd love to have your take on that, because it's such a major factor in what's happening in the state.
Sure. So we created the business court in the 88th legislative session in 2023. It became effective in September 2024. So we're still under 2 years of its life. We have divided the state is divided into 11 administrative judicial regions.
Okay.
And we have made operative 5 of those 11. 6 are not operative. I want to talk about those 6 in a minute. The 5 that are operative, if you look at the state map, those are going to be your Dallas-Fort Worth area, all the way down, just follow the highway to Austin, and then you get San Antonio, and then you shoot over and get the Houston area.
Right.
The eastern third of the state, the judicial administrative regions, are not operative there.
Okay.
And the business court is not operative in the judicial administrative regions in the west third of the state.
Right.
So if you look at the map, it's just the center of the state where we have business court judges. There are 10 of them total. They've been selected because they've got a decade or more of judicial and or business experience.
Nice.
They're being very well received. They process complex business cases in a way that the parties in the case expect and understand.
Right.
We need to grow that court. We need to have it cover the entire geography of the state, not just the center parts that have the big cities.
Right.
We're leaving out of the business court coverage, oddly enough, the parts of the state where there's the most hydrocarbon activity.
Right.
And that needs to be covered. We need these judges to get 6-year appointments, not 2-year appointments. That will encourage quality judges to actually take the office. It'll keep the governor's office from having to reappoint someone every 2 years.
Right.
We need permanent and safe offices and courtrooms for these judges. Right now, they are just borrowing facilities from various counties or law schools.
Right.
The court merits permanent facilities. These courts are going to create an internal affairs body of case law for the state. That is a doctrine of law that explains how corporate and other entities are governed and explains the relationship between the owners, perhaps shareholders or partners, and management,
right.
CEO and officers. These business court judges over time will develop a body of internal affairs law. And we will be able to match the likes of Delaware with some internal affairs law that will attract companies to our state. The business court judges also need to expand their jurisdiction.
Right.
Right now, their grant of jurisdiction is, I think, fairly limited. They handle certain matters for publicly traded companies. They handle certain business matters that have an amount in controversy of $5 million or more.
Right.
A lot of what they get in their court, they don't have jurisdiction over, and so they've got to ask the parties if they can hear these little tag-along issues. And if the parties say no, you've got a case that's busted up. Half of it's in a regular district court, half of it's in the business court. That's not efficient. We need the business courts to have supplemental jurisdiction similar to the federal courts when they receive cases out of the state system, whether through federal question jurisdiction or diversity jurisdiction. The federal courts can exercise jurisdiction over issues if they arise from a common nucleus of operative fact. And the judge makes that determination. The parties don't have a say in it. We need something like that for these business court judges. Right. I think in my lifetime, probably the most important fundamental shift to the civil justice system I will have seen will be the business court.
I agree with you. I think strategically, this is one of the most monumental changes I've seen in recent years across any of the states that is really setting up a great environment from a business perspective. Yeah.
And I need to mention, I'm talking about the business court. I also am in my mind thinking of the new 15th Court of Appeals.
Sure.
And so that is a new statewide civil appellate court.
Right.
It functions on a statewide basis, just like the Texas Supreme Court. Cases that are determined and resolved in the business court are appealed to the 15th Court of Appeals, which sits in Austin, though it can move around. That court has excellent judges, including a former classmate of mine, Scott Field. That court they need permanent, secure offices and a permanent courtroom. Right now, they're borrowing the courtroom from our high court for criminal matters, which is the Court of Criminal Appeals. 15th Court needs its own facilities. The reason the 15th is so important is we've outgrown our wonderful Texas Supreme Court.
Right.
So I can tell you, that court, I worked on it in the 90s and I was close to it in the 20-aughts. That court up until the year 2010, 2012 could handle the volume of civil cases that the state was throwing at it. And they took a lot more cases, and they had a lot more delayed resolutions of cases for which they came under criticism. So then from the 2010s to present, the Texas Supreme Court has been much more selective about the cases they take.
Okay.
They're only taking cases that are important to the jurisprudence of the state. It's roughly 70 a year that actually result in hearings.
Okay.
Plus another 10 to 20 that don't involve hearings. They're called per curiam cases. Our state's population has just, whatever the stat is, doubled or two and a half since 1990. Our state is just generating a volume of civil controversies, particularly business controversies.
Right.
Texas Supreme Court can't take all of them.
Right.
We need a 15th Court of Appeals to handle at least some of that case law. And then if issues still need to be resolved, or if there needs to be further attention from the 15th Court of Appeals, the case can go to the Texas Supreme Court.
Right. Yeah, it's the judicial structure in Texas is really fascinating as I've learned it. Like the Texas Supreme Court are all elected. And then in fact, you do a better job describing this. You have the Texas Supreme Court, and then you have the other version of the Supreme Court, right?
Court of Criminal Appeals.
The Court of Criminal Appeals, and then the 15th, and then you have these business courts, and then you have the general jurisdiction courts at the local level, which is just, again, from a structure and system perspective, quite fascinating.
It is, and I want to point out that there are certainly many district courts and county courts at law in the state that are perfectly capable of handling a complex business case. Right. I don't mean to suggest that's not the case. But here's the problem. For much of the state's geography, the district courts and county courts at law and statutory courts at law, they handle general jurisdiction. These judges are dealing with family law. They're dealing with criminal law. They're dealing with wills and estates. Mm-hmm. They have just got a broad jurisdiction. They don't have any law clerks helping these trial judges.
Right.
Okay. So we're pressing them in their limited resources to handle a multi-million-dollar contract dispute or oil and gas dispute. And maybe they'll take it and do a wonderful job with it. Right. And maybe they'll create an unpredictable, irregular result, which we then force some appellate court to have to clean up.
Right.
It's an inefficient way to go about things. The business community, not just in Texas, but everywhere in the world, values just about as much as anything predictability from the legal system.
Right.
Okay. They'll follow the law. You just got to tell them what the law is.
Right.
And when you have patchwork treatment of business disputes and different results depending upon where you're coming from,
right.
Okay, that lessens predictability. And businesses will want to stay away from Texas.
Right.
We don't want that.
Right, right. Now, how would that have changed? I know you've done a lot of study on this. The Texaco versus Pennzoil decision way back when it was a huge judgment. Huge judgment.
That is I call it the most notorious case in the state's history. I personally don't think it should be held up as an exemplar of what we want.
Correct.
It should be held up as something we don't want. It was Pennzoil, despite its name, headquartered in Texas, suing Texaco, despite its name, headquartered in New York City, fighting over John Paul Getty's oil reserves, which were up for sale. And it resulted in an application of New York tortious interference with contract law being adjudicated in a Houston courtroom, and then from there to a Houston Court of Appeals. And then oddly enough, the Texas Supreme Court didn't take the case, didn't review it. Texaco got burdened with a $10+ billion verdict, which became a $10+ billion judgment. This is back in 1985 when $10 billion was a lot of money. Nowadays, it's pocket change, but back in 85, it really hurt.
Right.
The case bankrupted Texaco, embarrassed the state, and directly led to several seminal factors that got momentum, and built the Texas Miracle.
Right.
Very close attention to our appellate judiciary and who's getting into office there.
Right.
Reforms at the legislative levels for superseding judgments, which are the body of law that involve collecting a judgment against a judgment defendant, while the defendant is trying to reverse the judgment on appeal.
Right.
It's a very arcane but important area of law, and we've given that some attention both after the Texaco case in the early 2000s. And then thanks to my efforts, we did some more attention to supersedious laws in the 2023 88th legislative session.
Right.
We've passed some more pro-business supersedious reforms. Other elected officials, we changed how we look at them and what we think they should do.
Sure.
Largely as a result of Texaco v. Pennzoil.
Very interesting.
It changed how we Texans orient our governor's office, lieutenant governor's office, legislature, agencies, and especially court systems. How do we orient them to the business community?
Right.
And it largely comes from the notorious Texaco v. Pennzoil case.
And you mentioned the predictability, and I know you expressed why that's important, but it's knowing the rules of the game, like you mentioned. If you go into a football game, and I say this all the time as well, if you're changing the rules in the middle of the game, it makes it really hard to know where to go and how to perform and how to create good outcomes. So that predictability is fantastic. But Texas is also doing quite a few other items, like the Texas Stock Exchange. The New York Stock Exchange is creating a Texas operation. The same with NASDAQ. So the foundation is just strategically shifting really fast. I mean, I say fast, but it's been, as you mentioned, from the 90s to current. But what's happening today and seeing the result of it is absolutely fascinating to watch.
It's been helpful. We've got agencies, for instance, the Railroad Commission, which regulates the oil and gas business. It's called the Railroad Commission for historical reasons, and we love calling it the Railroad Commission. Every few years, some legislator proposes that we name it the Texas Energy Commission, and we all shoot that down because we like it to be named the Railroad Commission because it's strange. The Railroad Commission has a reputation of being pro-business, and that's good. But I will fault them on we need to get on top of the orphan wells.
Sure.
Those are environmentally hazardous. They could ruin groundwater sources, and they do a lot of damage to good farm ground and ranch country. But that's one of our many agencies that has a very pro-business orientation. Our legislature is historically, well, at least since the 90s, been doing pro-business things. But I must add, I've seen a change in that is of concern to me. In the 88th legislative session of 2023, our legislators proposed, get this, 356 bills. Okay, they didn't become law. They were proposed laws that would create new causes of actions and or civil penalties. Okay, so that's putting more ways on the books you as a business person or as a Texan can get sued. Okay. That number by the 89th session, 2025, had grown to 763 bills proposing new causes of actions or penalties.
Sure.
Okay. Fortunately, most of those bills never came law.
Okay.
They didn't get out of the legislature. The governor never signed them. But in the 2023 session, we had 4 bills that became part of our statutory law that create new causes of action against businesses and employers. That number had grown to 41 by 2025. That's concerning to me. That is counterproductive.
Right.
I feel that we've got enough law in the books, whether it be judge-made case law or statutory law, combination. I think we have enough laws on the books to protect contract rights and property rights in Texas and life and limb if you've been injured or, God forbid, someone in your family's died. I think we got enough laws on the books. We don't need to be creating new ones. Now, we always need to refine our laws, but I am concerned about a proliferation of new ways to sue people.
Right.
That's not consistent with promoting a pro-business Texas.
Right. Now, what's fascinating to me, especially the more we speak, I look at you and I hear you speak in some of the items that you discuss. You are an absolute business guy. I see a lot of attorneys and they're great attorneys, but you can tell they are legal people, not necessarily business people. Love your background. How'd you end up going to law? Into law and law school?
Went to Trinity University in San Antonio. Go Spurs. They're going to have to pull a rabbit out of the hat to get out of this series. But Trinity University, San Antonio, then just applied to one law school. I guess because it was the closest to San Antonio was UT Austin.
Right.
Gathered up what little furniture I had and went to Austin. Not sure. I know I had an interest in being in business or law, and at some point decided to become a business lawyer. It's been a good choice. I do think that the fact I'm a business owner and at least half my week is spent doing business stuff gives me an insight and efficiency to my law practice that certain lawyers may lack. Right. And likewise, being a lawyer helps you to be a much better business person.
Really? Interesting.
You see angles and risk factors that a lot of business folks don't see.
Okay.
And law helps you to think and write very clearly. And that helps you if you segue that into business or into making art or whatever you choose to do. Thinking clearly is a good attribute.
That is really fascinating. I have to say, without getting in trouble with my friends listening, but for me on the business side, I've seen so many of our corporate attorneys really try to limit what we do because they want to reduce risk. Mm-hmm. And for so many on the business side, being an entrepreneur, growing a new division, expanding a division requires some risk. And a lot of them try to mitigate the risk. And so I have to listen to their advice and in many cases ignore it. Because it's a gamble, right? Life is really about risk, and growing a business is really about risk. And the question becomes, how much risk do you want to take?
Sure.
So I'm intrigued by your perspective, but no, you absolutely have a business mind. And I hear that you turned down Yale even as you were considering.
I don't know that I would have been taken, but it's a humorous story. My parents, my first week of my junior year at Amarillo High School was the college fair in the gymnasium. And there might have been 3 students who shuffled in and out of there that night. It wasn't well attended. And the first table was Rice University. Mom and Dad looked at that and said, that's Houston, that's dangerous. The second table I remember was Yale. Right. They said, I think we've heard of that. I'm not sure about it. No. And the third table was Trinity. And while San Antonio is a beautiful, safe town, that's where you're going to go. And so that decision was made by my junior year, and it was a good decision. Yeah, it was a good decision.
Now that's exciting. So on your business side, the name of your company, I think, represents Texas. It's all big in Texas. So before I moved here, I thought, though, they're just exaggerating. No, it really is. Texas, very prideful group of people, very prideful and bold business leaders. And so your company name reflects the same kind of strength, right?
Well, yep, you're right. So my companies, I tend to name them Robur. Okay. Robur is the Latin word for strength built over time.
Nice.
Okay, and it's also a word that Texans can't pronounce. It's a rhubarb. I might have rethought that. I translate and study Latin as my hobby. How a West Texas Protestant boy got good at that is a long story. But I like the name because it reflects my law practice as well as my business practice, which there have been no quick ways to make buck. I never get in and get out. Whenever I get into something, I realize it's going to be for the long haul.
Right.
It's going to be a multi-year commitment. And I think the name reflects, getting up every day and going to the office and working hard to build whatever you're trying to build.
Sure.
And to really pay very close attention to your relationships with your colleagues.
Right.
That's how success is built long and over time, in my experience. That's why I picked the name.
Right. Well, and I've heard that theme throughout our conversation, and I've spoken to a number of salespeople, and we've had this conversation, and it's easy to make that first sell. Not that it's easy, but once you make the first sell, it feels easy. Having them come back to you is really critical. And so you're right, as you build those relationships over time and people come back to you as they seem to do with you, that's the important part of growing a business. It's that long game and not just the quick dollars you mentioned. It's having people that trust you and believe in you, and they continue to grow with you and partner with you as well. Right? It
is. I felt whether you're trying to get into tech or oil and gas or finance, whatever field you're trying to get in, my personal experience and the experience of my colleagues and friends is you need to jump in with both legs and make a long-term commitment.
Right.
Just trying to dally with it, try to get in and out in a year or so. I haven't seen that pan out to much success.
Right.
So you just, as a young person, need to decide what industry do you want to get good at and build your connections in, and pick that industry and stick with it.
Right. Right. Someone asked me the other day, or made the comment, you seem good at whatever this is. And then I said, and that's what happens over time. Mm-hmm. Over time, you realize you become really good at something, whatever that something might be, whether it's music or an attorney or oil and gas. But time has a way of creating that level of expertise. Oftentimes.
It does. And my journey it also involved, I remained a business person and lawyer, but had a pretty radical shift mid-career, and around age 40 said, okay, you're a prized trial and appellate lawyer. You don't want to do that exclusively.
Sure.
And so, changed my mix up a bit.
Right.
And I will continue to do some trial and appellate work for long-term clients who ask me to do it, or if I find it truly interesting. But trial and appellate work is a huge time commitment.
It is.
You can't dally. You've got to really be committed to do it right. And so I've tried to have what I call litigation light coexist with the rest of the stuff I do.
Well, it's funny. You mentioned having to go up against some of those large law firms, but you've made it work. You've held your own. You were the David and Goliath of sorts, just having a smaller law firm practice competing against some of the other big ones. But no, you've been a master of the law and making sure that it works for you and your clients.
Yeah, in the oil and gas business, it works well because the large publicly traded companies and large E&P companies, they will tend to hire large corporate law firms.
Right.
That just tends to be where they go. But you have got a lot of medium-sized or small companies, and small in this business could be over $200 million in revenues or in assets.
Right.
You've got a lot of companies more at that level, and a lot of family offices who own oil and gas assets and interests, and a lot of individuals who own interests. And they usually don't pick the large corporate firm. They're wanting a smaller to medium-sized firm. So that's when guys like me become important.
Right.
So the industry needs both. And usually on the other side of a deal we're doing is a large pipeline company or a large publicly traded company. And I'm routinely going up against large law firm lawyers. And I learn a lot from them, and they learn a lot from me.
Sure. Well, I presume your expertise is really a huge defining proposition for you, just because a lot of the attorneys might not know the depth in oil and gas in this case. And so having that business knowledge is probably enormously grateful when you're at the boardroom table with the other team on the opposite side.
It helps. I mean, for years, I was a leading CLE, continuing legal education speaker and presenter from, the late 90s through about 2012. Then I just got so busy, I just couldn't keep making time. Right. Why go out and market yourself with CLE when you can't keep clients out the door?
Right.
I don't need to do more marketing.
Right.
So since I stopped being a presenter at CLEs, I routinely seek out every year 2 or 3 top-notch CLEs in usually oil and gas.
Okay.
But sometimes a different subject matter.
Sure.
And I have really benefited from other professionals in a classroom setting just teaching me new developments in my field.
Right. I think you mentioned a conference in one of our conversations that you went to that was incredible with as a large number of non-attorneys attending that conference.
Correct. Yeah. So I really like the conferences, and I'll give one example. There's a minerals management conference put on in Austin each spring by my friends at Graves Doherty, an Austin law firm. And that conference is wonderful because it's attended by half or more than half the folks in the room are not lawyers.
Nice.
They just are affected by or own the oil and gas assets. And then the other half are lawyers. And you just learn from both crowds.
Right.
And it's a wonderful way to get your CLE hours.
Right.
And in the olden days, I would go to conferences. I'd be the only lawyer in the room. It would be all usually large oil company engineers learning about CO2 injection in order to enhance oil recovery, or CO2 injection for purposes of storing it,
Right.
There were some renewables conferences I went to. So I still like going to conferences where there's not even a lawyer there.
Right. Now, we're recording from your office. Thank you. You have a beautiful office on the 17th floor overlooking Dallas, just absolutely incredible. And I look around at your artwork and your design, and I know there's a special story behind the design from, I believe, your partner's spouse, who is a noted artist. Globally noted.
Yes. The late, great Glenna Goodacre, clearly Lubbock's most famous artist the city ever produced. She built her career in Santa Fe and other parts of New Mexico, was a sculptor and painter and sketcher. And yes, thanks to the relationship I had with her and her husband, about half of the art and furniture you see in here was handpicked by her. She's no longer with us. And the other half is just high-end Southwestern art, which I picked in her spirit.
Okay.
So I love Southwestern art. I love going to the galleries of North New Mexico. I've discovered a Western museum in Kerrville, Texas that rivals anything I've seen in New Mexico or Colorado. It's Kerrville, Texas. Check it out. Yeah.
So I've noticed Willie Nelson. Yeah. What's the connection to Willie Nelson?
If you're from Texas, Willie Nelson is as important as George Washington to the USA, right? Yes. I mean, he's just a seminal artist, and he's still alive. He's had such a wonderful, long life, and flags, I can assure you, will be flown at half mast if the man ever passes away. Yes. Now, everyone loves Willie, his personality, his music. Also got ZZ Top.
Okay, I saw that.
Another great Texan. Stevie Ray Vaughan was quite possibly the greatest blues guitarist of all time. I got some photos of him.
Right.
I got some Lyle Lovett and Townes Van Zandt around here too. I love good music. I love music like Waylon Jennings that have deep Texas roots.
Sure.
So yeah, thank you for noticing.
Well, that, and not to take away from your business and legal side, but I hear you also like a little fly fishing and a little wine. You're a connoisseur and appreciator of great wine.
Thank you. Yeah, I picked up fly fishing in my mid-30s and have stayed active with it. I go on a couple of corporate trips each year with folks who work with me. We go together. Then I'll get some more fly fishing on my own. I do hit, New Mexico, Colorado, Montana pretty regularly. Yes. I've recently found Utah, and I'm just having a blast with it. But yes, and then the wine, a lot of my legacy Texan families had second homes in, or more commonly, just retired in wine country, California. Yes. So around the Santa Barbara area, Central Coast, a lot of Sonoma, Napa. For years, I'd need to go out there to meet with them, and I would always play a day of hooky. Taxiing, back in the day, was taxing. Now it's lifting or Ubering between the wineries. You don't want to be driving.
Right.
But yeah, I enjoy high quality wine.
But you also told me Texas has a growing, burgeoning grape wine community as well.
I've been told by folks who really know grapes that parts of West Texas in particular, because of the elevation, the soil, and the large temperature fluctuations in a given day, are very good for making excellent Cabernet Sauvignon and Chardonnay.
Yes, I love it.
I think those are the two. So some grapes really need big temperature swings. So yeah, there are more acreages devoted to wine grape growing out there.
Right,
it's
that's
nice to see.
And I didn't know that, so I have to make my way to visit that part of the state.
The same ground where they grow some of the world's best cotton and linseed, they're growing grapes in it.
Yes, absolutely. James, this has been phenomenal. If you had to leave any business Decoded tips with people listening in, either on law, oil and gas, creating a business like Robur, what would you say to them? How would you help them understand what it takes to build and grow that business? I know we've given some of those elements in earlier conversation, but what would you say to them if they're just getting started? Like, how do they have the passion for a particular subject? How do they have the resolve to keep that business interest and entrepreneurship going? How do they grow and sustain in business?
I think a degree of specialization is important. So if you're going to be in tech, pick one type of tech you're going to get really good at.
Yes.
If you're going to be in oil and gas like me, it started with me being really good at processed gas, and then that grew to oil exploration and marketing, and then that grew to water management. But I would tell a young person, start with one industry and get really good at the segment, an important segment in that industry. As you've heard me say several times, it's a multi-year commitment.
It is.
Don't spread yourself too thin trying to do too many different things, and don't think you're going to get in and out of anything in 2 years as a success. You're going to need to invest a lot of time in whatever you choose.
Right.
And then over time, you'll diversify out of what you first picked, and you'll be doing different, new and exciting things. But it comes with time.
Right.
Really cherish the relationships. I've had mentors, wonderful mentors, usually retired oil and gas folks or not even lawyers, who've just taught me many aspects of the business.
Right.
I've been blessed by wonderful mentors and wonderful long-term relationships. That's also
amazing.
very important.
Amazing. So we're here with super lawyer, James Holmes, and great businessman. So James, thank you for being a part of our program and sharing your background, sharing oil and gas with those that are listening in.
Thanks for having me, Ronnie.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
For you listening, make sure that you share this episode with all of your friends, that you like and subscribe us on YouTube and iHeart and Spotify and every other place where you find your podcast, and become a part of the Business Decoded family. Thank you for joining us on Business Decoded with Ronnie Spellman.
Stay ahead of the curve. Subscribe right now. We will see you at the next episode.